3.
Good afternoon and welcome to the May 18th Oregon Tourism Commission meeting. To everyone that has joined us virtually today, thank you for taking the time to be with us. Today's meeting materials, including the agenda and supplemental materials, can be found on the Travel Oregon Industry website if you'd like to follow along. I'd now like to ask the Commission to introduce themselves, and we'll do this in alphabetical order, starting with Commissioner Gremmels.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm David Gremmels, founder and president of Road Creamery, a small company in Southern Oregon and dedicated to sustainability and creating the world's finest handmade cheese. Thank you.
Thanks, David. And Commissioner Pendleton.
Thank you. David Pendleton, co-owner of America's Hub Tours and Oregon Tour Experts.
Commissioner Ponzi.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm Anna Maria Ponzi, former CEO of Ponzi Vineyards in the Willamette Valley and current owner of AM Ponzi and Company.
Commissioner Stevenson.
Hello, I'm Erin Stevenson. I am co-owner of the Atticus Hotel, 3rd Street Flats, and the newly opened Cypress Restaurant in beautiful McMinnville, Oregon.
Thank you. Commissioner Willits.
Yeah, Greg Willits. Own and run Five Pine Lodge in Sisters, Oregon, and currently enjoying sunny, green, beautiful Central Oregon, and addicted to smoky blue cheese from Road Creamery. Thank you.
Very nice. Commissioner Youngblood.
Good afternoon, everyone. Scott Youngblood with Benchmark Luxury and Lifestyle Hotels, operating 4 beautiful hotels in the heart of downtown Portland.
Very good. And now in reverse alphabetical order, we'll move to Vice Chair DeNovo.
Thank you, Chair Boyles. Lucinda DeNovo, Director of Sales at the Mill Casino Hotel and RV Park, owned and operated by the Coquille Indian Tribe.
And I am Richard Boyles of Merite Hotel Management and currently serving as Chair of the Oregon Tourism Commission. Well, thank you for those introductions, customers. It must be a customer service day. Commissioners, thank you, commissioners. All right. Well, I have a few acknowledgments I'd like to make before we move on to the public hearing. First of all, I'd like to thank Vice Chair DeNovo for chairing the April 23rd meeting in Portland, which I was unable to attend. Thanks very much, Lucinda. I'd also like to thank commissioners for their review of the draft Travel Oregon plan and budget and providing input for Todd and staff to consider. And I'd like to thank Todd and staff for their responsiveness in considering that input and making some adjustments to the draft to get us to the document that was shared with the industry. So, commissioners, do you have anything before we get started with the next portion of the meeting? All right, very good. Then we'll move on in to the review of the strategic plan and budget. Today's meeting is dedicated to reviewing the Travel Oregon 2023-25 draft strategic plan and budget, and to hold a public hearing and receive and review comments on the plan. So, Todd, would you please walk us through the draft?
Happy to do that. And thank you, Chair Boyles, for your comments recognizing the work of the staff team in responding to the initial comments that we'd received from members of the commission. You're not only members of the commission, you're obviously customers. So we appreciate that very, very much. Very thoughtful comments. As always, very grateful for those and the opportunity to be able to respond and come back with what we believe is an even stronger product in terms of our 23-25 strategic plan and budget. So I share your gratitude and express my gratitude to the members of the team that did so much of the heavy lifting, both in terms of the work that went into the vision that really is the foundation for this biennial plan, and I'll speak to that a little bit more in a moment, as well as developing then the priorities for this plan and the budget to go with it. And there are Many, many hands, too many to note at this time, but suffice to say, I'm grateful for each and every one of them because it's what's made this plan as strong as it is, both from a budgetary standpoint as well as a strategic priorities standpoint. So with that, I do have a deck that I'd like to share, and I'm going to ask Sarah Watson to go ahead and drive the deck for me while she's there at Allied, and we'll go ahead and share screen and walk the members of the commission and the members of the public that are joining us here today through this brief overview of the plan and the budget. And then Commissioner Boyles, you will be free to open the public hearing and then obviously to entertain any conversations and questions that commissioners may have. So with that, Sarah, let's go ahead and we'll start the sharing of the deck and begin with the presentation. And if you could go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you. Commissioners, we want to make sure that the work we do stems from the strategic vision that has been adopted by the commission back in June of last year. So our intention, obviously, is to make sure that we're true to that vision, that the work that we're doing in this space is making sure that Oregon is a welcoming destination where tourism is driving economic prosperity, where it's bringing benefits to the natural environment, and where we're celebrating the rich and diverse cultures that comprise Oregon and Oregon's people and the residents of this state. Next slide, please, Sarah. As aspirational as the vision is, Travel Oregon has a very clearly defined role in achieving that vision. We see our mission as inspiring travel that uplifts Oregon communities. This is really making sure that we're emphasizing our role as an economic development agency. We're going to do this by collaborating with stakeholders, collaborating with partners, making sure that we're aligning as stewards of this place, both in terms of stewarding the brand, as well as stewarding the destination itself. We're going to work to optimize the economic opportunity. We're going to work to make sure that we're advancing equity, and we're going to work to make sure that we're respecting the ecosystems, the cultures, and the places that make Oregon, Oregon. Next slide, please. All the work that we do flows through this destination stewardship approach. This is a very intentional move on the part of Travel Oregon and the Oregon Tourism Commission. We discussed this at length last fall in advance of the actual adoption of the strategic vision last June. The destination stewardship approach is an entirely new approach for us, but we all believe that it was the right approach for us. It's about making sure that the work we do flows through three very separate and distinct lenses that are all knit together very cleanly in making sure that our work is advancing the mission and the vision that I just laid out. Those three lenses are the prosperity lens, the racial equity lens, and the regenerative tourism lens. And I want to just take a minute to touch on each of those lenses before stepping into some of the details of the plan itself. Next slide, please. In applying these lenses, it's really quite straightforward in the sense that we believe that there are a series of questions that we need to be asking ourselves. And early in this process, this is going to be a very intentional part of the work that we do. It'll become more natural, obviously, over time, but right now it's done with great intent and deliberation as we move into this first full biennium of this new 10-year strategic vision. The prosperity lens is obviously central to the work that we do as an economic development agency. How will the work that we're doing best optimize the economic impact of our investments that we're making, of the investments that we're collaborating with stakeholders and partners, and bringing leverage and alignment to not only our budgets, but our messages and our investment of staff time, expertise, and talent as well. What tourism industry jobs are going to be created and supported as a result of the work that we're doing? And are the economic benefits being realized equitably at a regional level and at a community level throughout the state? Next slide, please. The racial equity lens also comes with a series of questions that we need to make sure we're intentional in asking as we carry out our work. Are there racial inequities that exist within the work itself? How might decisions around that work contribute to racial inequities or to any racial equities as well? Who benefits from the decision? Are there folks who may be burdened by the decision? And would there possibly be any unintended consequences that could contribute to any racial inequities that we would want to make sure are mitigated as the decisions are carried out and are implemented? Next slide, please. The regenerative tourism lens may feel like new language. And I think with the time that we've spent on it as a commission, probably less so, but still within the industry, this is new language. There's been historically a great deal of conversation around sustainable travel, eco travel, et cetera. Regenerative tourism to me is different. And the difference is found in the fact that there are many initiatives out there that talk about not doing harm when you are out on public lands, for example. Leaving no trace, leave nothing but footsteps, take nothing but pictures, those adages. And they're powerful and they've made a difference and they're worthy of being adopted and implemented by folks across the country. The difference for me with regenerative travel is that regenerative travel adopts the perspective that tourism and travel can actually leave a place better, not only because of the economic vitality that travel and tourism can bring as visitors travel to a community, spend dollars, investing in local makers, staying at local hotels and eating in local restaurants and the like, but also by contributing back to the natural environment as well. And we've seen some pilots of that work just in this last year as we've been contemplating how to roll forward with this regenerative tourism lens. So this is our opportunity to ask ourselves questions like, what types of effects will this work have on the environment and on future generations that will want to be able to enjoy this same natural environment as well? Will the results of our work support visitors in having a positive impact on the destination, on Oregon overall? And perhaps most importantly, in terms of a shift in the mindset as we approach the travel and tourism industry in the 23-25 biennium is have residents and other stakeholders been involved in an inclusive way, informing, validating, and co-creating the management of a destination, including its promotional efforts, accommodations, transportation, and more. Next slide, please. So as you noted, when you were reviewing the biennial strategic plan that was distributed to you prior to this meeting, there's a lot that's hinging on and stemming from this vision. I believe that's appropriate. I do not want, nor do I believe the commission wants, a 10-year strategic vision that sits on a shelf. You want to see it brought to life. I definitely am committed to seeing it brought to life. And I assure you, the team at Travel Oregon is excited to see this being brought to life. So it's very intentional on my part that you feel and see the 10-year strategic vision playing such a foundational role in this 23-25 biennial strategic plan. That's why the reference to not only the destination stewardship approach is so important, but also the references to the three lenses. You know, when I talk about these objectives, and as I go through these next few slides, you'll hear me referencing some of the strategic priorities that are called out in that 10-year strategic vision. Those are important, those are valuable, those have been put in place very intentionally by the members of the Oregon Tourism Commission. However, at the same time, there are core programs that we also operate that will run with the destination stewardship approach that may or may not have a direct reflection on some of those strategic priorities. They are in some ways additive to, in some ways informing the work that we do, and in some ways they're separate and distinct in terms of work that we want to make sure is accomplished over the course of the next 10 years as we continue with a number of the core programs that our stakeholders expect from us. That was one of the messages that came through loud and clear and was called out in the biennial strategic plan that you had the opportunity to review. Our stakeholders acknowledge that our core programs are still important. Yes, the strategic vision, incredibly valuable. The 19 strategic priorities that are called out in that vision, extremely necessary, as are the core programs. What I want to assure you of is that this isn't an either or, this is an and. The core programs and the strategic priorities, the work to accomplish those strategic priorities must be carried out using the destination stewardship approach, must be carried out applying the 3 lenses that I just referenced earlier. So with that being said, the objectives that the strategic priorities are organized around and portions of the biennial strategic plan are then organized around are as you see them here. These 4 interconnected strategies are bringing our mission to life. First and foremost, as an economic development agency, Oregon's tourism economy is flourishing. Second objective, Oregon is striving to be a place of equity. Third, Oregon delivers remarkable experiences. And fourth, Oregon respects its natural environment. Next slide, please. So with that, we comprise what you now have before you as the draft 2023-25 Travel Oregon Strategic Plan and Budget. Next slide, please. Included in that plan and budget is much of the overview that I just provided. Again, we know this information regarding the vision is new, not to you, but to many members of our industry and to many of our stakeholders as well. So it's important for us to make sure that we are reiterating the foundational elements that are driving this biennial strategic plan by referencing back to the 10-year strategic vision. Specifically, when we get into the components where we're calling out the specific work that we want to do in accomplishing the strategic objectives, the strategic priorities that are called out within the strategic plan, you see, as you do here on this slide, where I speak to the objective of Oregon's tourism economy is flourishing. What you see highlighted in green is a priority strategy that was identified last August, where an action team was then formed amongst our staff team, and a budget modification was brought forward to the commission at their December meeting in December, as many of you may recall, the December meeting in Astoria, which I'm sure many of you recall. And action was able to begin being taken, and budget was able to be set aside to begin doing some work towards the accomplishment of this particular strategic objective. The 2 that you see highlighted in yellow are what I would call the what's next. These are the ones that we have identified as the next set of priorities. And again, these are called out specifically within the biennial strategic plan and budget. Action teams have not been formed around the ones that you see here in yellow. Budgets have not been established yet for the ones that you see in yellow. That's work that will commence once this plan and budget is acted upon by the commission at their June meeting when we meet in Lakeview, and we enter the next biennium after July 1st. Our intention would be to form action teams around these specific strategic priorities, and as you've heard me reference in the past, bring a subsequent budget modification for the commission's consideration back to them at a meeting next fall. Next slide, please. In the area of Oregon is striving to be a place of equity, the one that you see here highlighted in green is paramount for us. And it's been a focus for us and will continue to be a primary focus for us into this next biennium. This is the walk the talk strategic priority. This is making sure we've got our house in order, that we understand and are applying the principles and the values of DEI internally at Travel Oregon before we're aggressively carrying the work out across the industry, that we're carrying it out in our programming, that we're bringing together, for example, focus groups when pulling together our advertising campaigns, that we're doing all we can to make sure that we have a diverse group of stakeholders that are providing input to our biennial strategic plans, that we're looking at our procurement, we're looking at our employee recruitment and training opportunities as well. So this is very internally focused as we enter this next biennium as well. Next slide, please. In the area of Oregon delivers remarkable experiences, you see 3 that were called out in this initial group of 5 as priorities for us to begin working on with action teams right away. And I think when you review them, I guess what I will call the obviousness of that kind of pops out. How do we make sure we're reducing high visitation pressures and increasing community livability by investing in the development of niche tourism products? How do we provide resources and assistance to tourism-related businesses, organizations, and communities that are experiencing or have experienced crisis, whether it's wildfire, drought, or the global pandemic? And how do we utilize partnerships to advance educational and career opportunities to develop, attract, and retain Oregon's tourism workforce? These are 3 themes that have come through loud and clear as we've navigated this last year, and they will continue to be strategic priorities for us in this upcoming biennium as well. In addition, we're adding the 2 others that you see there highlighted in yellow, supporting the stewardship and development of new and existing tourism experiences and amenities, and stimulating and bolstering those regenerative tourism businesses and product development opportunities across the state, urban, rural, tribal lands, providing visitors with those immersive Oregon experiences that we're known for. Next slide, please. Under the objective of Oregon respecting its natural environment, 2 have been very specifically identified as work to commence in this new biennium. Working in tandem with stakeholders and partners to create and implement a climate action plan, and partnering with and supporting resource management agencies at the tribal level, local level, state level, and federal level to sustain our natural resources and mitigate visitor impacts on public and tribal lands and waterways. As a public agency, there are requirements of us in responding to executive orders. There is an executive order around reducing carbon emissions in the state of Oregon. We have a role to play in that as the lead tourism agency for the state of Oregon. We want to make sure the work we do in this space is done in alignment with our partners as well. Next slide, please. One of the additions that was made to our plan in response to the work that we did in sending it out in advance to the commission and the great feedback that you provided us was to also provide you with a snapshot of those initial strategic priorities that were called out and the work that is being done in this space. So this focuses specifically on those because this is where the action teams have already met, prioritized strategies have been identified, initial key milestones have been established, and measures of success are in place. So wanted to make sure that this was called out in a higher level of detail as we propose this 23-25 plan, acknowledging again that there is more work to come and calling that out very overtly in this draft, that there is more work to come on the other 7 strategic priorities that have been identified, action teams to be formed, budgets to be estimated, and a budget modification to be forthcoming with the commission. Within all this work, and you've heard me speak to this before, both those from the industry that are tuning in, and certainly you as commissioners, even as recently as last week, that one of the big steps over the course of this last year in response to the adoption of the strategic vision by the Oregon Tourism Commission has been us looking at ourselves as an agency and to make sure that we are structured in the best way possible, the most efficient way possible to be able to deliver on the values and the promise and the hope that's contained within that 10-year strategic vision. Next slide, please. So this was shared with the commission last week, and this has been shared with many in our, well, all of our industry previously in some correspondence back in January. But again, I just wanted to highlight for you the very intentional changes that we are making as an organization, the transformational opportunity that we see as an agency for us to be able to deliver very solidly against the 10-year strategic vision. There's some changes from what was originally proposed in January. Some of the names of the departments have been modified. They were working titles to begin with. We got great feedback from some of you, from partners in the industry, and from our staff as well. So the department, for example, that had the working title of Experience Enrichment is the Destination Stewardship Department. This is where our investments of time and talent, expertise, as well as financial resources are made to the betterment of Oregon as a destination. The product development work, community development work, our competitive grant program, our Wine Country license plate program, our other investments that are being made by our agency, as well as the Regional Cooperative Tourism Program and other regional-based services will live within this Destination Stewardship Department. The department that was known as Brand Strategy originally is now called Brand Stewardship. Again, entirely appropriate and necessary in my estimation, because this is the department that will oversee the stewardship of our brand as an agency, as a state, as a destination. And therefore, the title change here, as well as in the titles of the folks within the department. This is where the advertising will live, and the branding work, the integrated marketing, our promotion and sales efforts as well will also live. New department formed, referred to as Insights and Impact, same title as what you saw initially, bringing together really core services that are going to be in service to the entirety of the agency, as well as the entirety of the industry. Think about our industry advocacy and engagement, our internal and external communications, the research, insights, and analytic work that Travel Oregon does and does very, very well. Our portfolio management work is us onboarding new bodies of work to Travel Oregon and making sure we have the capacity, both financial and human, to make sure that we can deliver on that work. And if not, we need to revisit our priorities and make sure that we're able to address those and move forward efficiently and effectively. And of course, our strategy and performance management work will reside within Insights and Impact as well. There's not a VP of administration. Instead, what we have is a director of operations and a director of finance and accounting, both very strong, necessary roles overseeing very separate and distinct components of our administrative function, and they will report up through the chief administrative officer, as will, as you note here, our HR functions, our people and culture functions as well. Next slide, please. So this brings me to the budget. And what I'd like to note here, few things. There's some modifications that have been made to the revenue forecast that you saw back in February. Tourism Economics, as you may recall, provided us with a baseline estimate of 4% growth this year, this upcoming fiscal year, FY24. And for year 2 of the biennium, FY25, they estimated an increase in statewide lodging tax of 9%. However, their upside scenario for year 1, FY24, was 11%. So the range was between 4 and 11%, as they saw, between a baseline scenario and an upside scenario. Since our meeting in February, some additional information has come to light for me and warrants your consideration. Again, not for action today. We're going to continue to monitor this and bring you our final when we gather in June in Lakeview. But this additional information that has come to light for me that I wanted to be sure and share with you today is that our team, working with STR, has seen where the estimate for this calendar year in terms of lodging revenue is expected to grow 8.8%. The United Nations World Tourism Organization looked at last year's international arrivals This is global, by the way, not specifically to the US, but global. And they found that we were at 65% in 2022 of where we were prior to COVID. However, in the first quarter of 2023, the number of international arrivals has doubled over the first quarter of 2022. And we're now on track to easily meet their estimate of 80% of pre-COVID levels this year. And the final piece of information I wanted to be sure and share was that the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis, as you may have heard, came out with their revenue forecast for the state of Oregon yesterday. And they have forecasted a much stronger revenue forecast than they had originally anticipated back in March. This will be the final revenue forecast for this legislative session, and therefore the one that the legislature will use in building final budgets for the next biennium. One of the things that I noted, because it really drove the estimates that were coming from tourism economics back in February, was, will there be a recession? If so, how deep will it be? If so, how much will it impact the travel and tourism industry? And if so, when exactly might it happen? And how deep might it be? Well, according to the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis now, the expectation is of a mild recession. And I think the word they used in the email that I received from them was like mild recession, if any. But a mild recession is what's anticipated. And it will likely be, per their estimation, in 2024 or beyond. So they're not anticipating, they're not forecasting at the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis at this time a recession in this calendar year. Maybe 24, could even be later. And for that reason, I have put forward a budget that revises our revenue forecast for year one. Remember, the range from tourism economics was 4 to 11%. STR was putting it closer to 9%. My estimation, my forecast now for year one, FY24, is 8%. So not going all the way to the 11 upside, not going all the way to the 9% that STR estimated, but 8%. And for year two, leaving it the same. They'd estimated 9% right now, and I think that's prudent, and left that 9% growth in year two, again, based on some of this other data that I shared with you earlier, most notably the Oregon Office of Economic Analysis left that 9% alone for year two. So with that, you see the proposed budget modifications that, budget numbers that are being proposed. On the revenue side, on the sources side, you have the transient lodging tax total estimated, forecasted transient lodging tax for the 23-25 biennium, $91.4 million. The transient lodging tax from FY23, this is the portion of lodging tax that we're currently pacing ahead of budget. You may recall that our budget for this year is $38 million. We are currently tracking to reach 40.5 million. That's a delta of 2.5 million. 70% or 1.75 million is available to Travel Oregon for programs and personnel, and 30% is statutorily encumbered in our RCTP and our grants program. We're forecasting other income. This is Governor's Conference income. This is Welcome Center brochure program. This is other grants, et cetera, of 1.696 million for a total revenue forecast of 94.8 million. Then under the program budgets, you see the breakdowns there. We're looking at 33.9 million in brand stewardship, 34.7 million in destination stewardship, which does include, I want to be sure and call this out, the 10% encumbered funds for the competitive grants program, 9.1 million, 20% for the encumbered RCTP program of 18.2 million. These are biennial numbers. Then within insights and impact of 14.4 million, our administration and operations budget, 10.9 million. And then with the increasing budget, the commission has a 5% reserve fund policy. So setting aside the additional revenue into our operating reserve would equate to 885,700. So total expenses, $94.8 million. Next slide, please. I know one of the aspects of the budget modification that we brought to the commission in December that you all greatly appreciated, and I wanted to be sure and bring it forward to you now in a biennial budget format, is how this budget breaks out based on those 4 very specific objectives contained within our 10-year strategic vision. So again, this isn't all the dollars, but these are those dollars that can be specifically tracked to delivering on those objectives that are contained within the strategic vision. I mentioned the work of core programs as well as the work of against the strategic vision. This doesn't including staff costs. This is program dollar. These are program dollars that are being invested, with roughly 9 million into the objective of Oregon's tourism economy is flourishing. Similar amount going into Oregon is striving to be a place of equity. Similar amount into Oregon delivering on remarkable experiences. 7.4 million in Oregon respects its natural environments. Total of $34.4 million that are tied to those very specific objectives. Next slide, please. So Chair Boyles, as I prepare to turn this back over to you for the public hearing, I just wanted to cover next steps as a little bit of housekeeping for all of us today. The May 10th timeline has been met. That's when the draft plan and the budget was posted. The opportunity for public comment began. May 18th is where we find ourselves today. The draft plan and budget presentation that I just delivered to each and every one of you, as well as a public hearing on the plan and the budget, which will commence shortly. On May 31st, the draft plan and budget comment period will close. Then on June 13th, the commission will meet to consider and take action on the 2023-25 strategic plan and action. And then on July 1 of 2023, that plan and budget will go into effect. The one other point I wanted to make is that on May 10th, when the draft plan and budget was posted and available for public comment, we also met all statutory obligations that are called out in the Oregon Tourism Commission's statutes, specifically sharing the plan and budget with the governor, with legislative leadership, with the industry trade associations. We also shared it with other state agencies that we have a nexus with, that we have a close working collaboration with, so that they were able to see the work and the priorities that we're planning to undertake over the course of the next biennium as well, in addition to posting it for public comment as well. So with that, Chair Boyles, I'll conclude my remarks and I will turn this back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Todd. Appreciate the presentation, the orientation to the plan and budget, and some insights into how that work will be carried out. Commissioners, I'm sure there are a number of questions and comments, but I'd like to hold any questions and comments until after the public hearing. And I am now opening that public hearing. There is some boilerplate to take care of here. Some of it is redundant to things that Todd said, but in the interest of making sure we cover all of this as needs to be covered, I will go through that boilerplate. So, Commissioners, I'd like to acknowledge that in holding a meeting today, we met all public meeting notice requirements provided by state law. On Monday, May 1st, the Commission meeting notice for today's public comment was posted to the Commission meetings webpage. Notice was sent through our industry communications, and the agenda was posted along with a link to this live stream. On Wednesday, May 10th, as Todd said, the Travel Oregon 2023-25 draft strategic plan and budget were posted to the industry website in compliance with ORS 284.114. The draft plan was sent to Governor Kotek, the Director of Business Oregon, and two tourism industry associations, the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association, as well as Oregon Destinations Association. I'd also like to acknowledge that staff went above and beyond the basic requirement here and sent copies of the plan to all legislative leadership, our 7 regional destination organizations, 24 additional agency and industry partners, and our federally recognized tribal contacts. So the public hearing is now open on the draft strategic plan and budget. We had no requests today to join us virtually in person and provide public comments on the draft plan. We did have 5 comments that have been submitted so far, and those have been submitted to the commission for consideration and will be posted to the commission meeting as part of the public record. The public comment period remains open until May 31st, and any additional comments received will be forwarded to the commission and considered when staff draft the final 2023 strategic plan and budget that will come before the commission at our June 13th meeting for approval. So with that boilerplate covered and with no virtual presentations or requests to comment being made, I will now close the public hearing and present commissioners the opportunity to make comment or ask questions about the draft plan. Commissioners?
Yes, hi, I do have a question. A couple questions. I understand that there are stakeholders that are viewing this meeting. However, they cannot make comment. Is that because they had to go through in advance to make an appointment to be heard during this meeting?
That is my understanding of the process, yes.
Okay. Okay. My question is really, as usual, sorry, Todd, but it's clarity. If we can go back to the 10-year strategic vision objectives, I'm just not sure if I understand the full budget, the 94.8, and how the 10-year strategic vision objectives, how does that work within the main budget? If that
Sure.
makes sense to you.
Yeah.
Because you've got 34 something in here in the 10-year strategic vision, but how does that nestle into the main budget, or does it?
It does, absolutely. It is part of what we do as a staff team, and what each of the department heads in particular did is we navigated this with the incredibly capable assistance of Kathleen, and who oversees our budget and operations functions at Travel Oregon. When budgets are proposed within a department, that's what you see in that main budget page. That's the budget we would be asking the commission to adopt, that $94 million budget.
Right.
What you see in that $34 million budget are those things within those line items that are specifically tied to those objectives. Okay, so that's a second layer of work in the budgeting process, where very specific work that is called out within a department to that is tied to one of those objectives. That money is basically tabulated as being in service to that specific objective. So the $34 million that you see there as an outcome-based budget tied to the objectives is a subset of the $94 million budget.
Okay.
It's a great question, Maria, and I'm glad you asked it. Thank you.
I did. That's what I assumed, but I wanted to make sure that I was understanding that properly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I do think it's important to say at this point that the opportunity was presented for folks to make comment before us today, but for those who might not have gotten the word early enough, the public record does remain open for written submittal through the 31st of May. So there is further opportunity to comment.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
So, so with that being said, Chair Boyles, my understanding is that that public comment is still for us to have conversation before this is approved.
Yeah, I would expect that would be part of our process on our upcoming June meeting. Yes, is to consider any further comments that are presented.
Great, thank you.
As if I may, Chair Boyles, as well as comments that you may have as commissioners on things, your questions you may have about the plan as you have it now, not only during this time frame that's mapped out, that's our open public comment period, but you as commissioners may also have questions, and I hope, as you did with the preliminary draft, you will not hesitate to reach out to me with any questions that you have, comments that you have, things that you like, things that you may have a question about, whether it's about clarity, whatever it may be. And as we navigate this, and then as Chair Boyle said, there will be another deliberative process when we come to our meeting in June for the commission before taking any action on the plan and budget, for you to be able to consider any further public comment that has come in and to be able to deliberate on that before you take action.
Thank you.
Chair Bowles?
Yes, David Pendleton.
First of all, I just want to say to Todd and his team, thank you. I know that initially when the draft came out and with the feedback that I gave, there was a immediate response. And I was just quite surprised, not just by their response, but, for myself, I really wanted to see that. And Todd touched on it earlier, the tourism driver, the economic impact, which impacts the businesses, communities, and visitors. And we can go on, but that's really a key driver to ensure that we reach and achieve all the priorities that's laid out. But he and his team pushed back on me, so we can do this, but at the same time too, we can hold the equity lens right where it is. And I felt from our conversation that there was a good commitment there to move forward. And I didn't detect that there was going to be any shortcuts or anything. So I'm excited about the work they're going to be doing as they move through the destination stewardship approach. I really love the fact that regenerative tourism is elevated here. And I know with the work that Willamette Valley Vineyards Association has done and what Danielle shared with me, that's an area that I really would love to see us continue to prioritize. The other thing is simply, the other part of this, I think Todd touched on, that next fall we'll get another glimpse of some of the work that some of the teams that they will put together will accomplish. For me, within this draft plan, the measures of success and the KPIs, those are all important pieces. But at the same time, once again, I think it's important to take the time and get it done and do it right, so that the team truly has a plan in which to work through. And so I'm excited, and I was so happy to hear that they were going to take the time to do it and do it right, and then respond back to us. So kudos to you, Todd, and your team as well. Thanks.
Thanks, David.
I forgot to say thank you. Thank you. I forget that part. Thanks, David, for reminding me.
Commissioner Youngblood, I see you've taken yourself off mute. Do you have a comment to make or a question to ask?
Really a comment. Thank you, Chair Boyles. Just having been through this process a few times now, I'm bolstered by the extent to which the agency and our leadership at Travel Oregon go as it relates to transparency of this process, making sure that we are oversharing not only with those bodies to whom we are statutorily required to communicate, but really taking pains to get this out to a broader cross-section of our industry for their feedback to interagency department partners rather within the state. These are things that are a reflection of the character of the organization and really transcend the obligation that we have as it relates to responsiveness and the comments that Commissioner Pendleton made. I'm grateful to know that each time one of us has brought up questions, concerns, ideas, how come, why not, what if, that these things are taken seriously and really given thoughtful time to respond to. And I've never felt ignored or neglected when even when asking questions that even while asking them feel like they might be boneheaded or obtuse. And then lastly, just the level of responsibility that is evident in this body of work as I read through and mark it up. And Sarah, I know you're watching from somewhere. I'm sorry that I always have to print it out so that I can mark it up in ink. But the responsibility that goes that is clearly reflected in this body of work, the solemn ownership, tying the budget to the 10-year strategic vision, as you articulated a few minutes ago, Todd, and as you inquired about, Maria, it's unlike what we see in a lot of aspects of our professional lives, where this is just merely a process that we need to go through in order to resume business as usual. So I'm going to try not to forget to say thank you as I conclude this comment, and thank every member of the Travel Oregon team for the investment of time, of your self, of your heart, of your industry in making this plan meaningful, making it actionable, making it attainable, and still keeping it conservative and real as it relates to the budgetary forecast. Just thank you as all.
And thank you for those comments, Commissioner Youngblood. Vice Chair DeNovo.
I just want to reiterate, Scott and David have already done a great job articulating just how thoughtful the plan is. I was very appreciative that the commission got to see this beforehand, and how Todd and the entire team took my comments to heart. And I believe with all of our comments made ultimately a better plan. So I just really want to thank you for that. And I look forward to the June meeting to see what comments we receive back from the industry. But again, it just really thank you to the team. That plan was presented to us and we had about a week to review it. And I know I made a few comments. So that was turned around in just a few days, which was pretty remarkable. So really, really thank you to you, Todd. Thank you to the team for all of your work on this plan.
Thanks, Cindy.
I see that Commissioner Willits has his hand up. Greg, please.
I think that's a proper thing to do. And on that note, I will start with a thank you. And thank you, Todd and staff, for doing an amazing job. And to the commissioners, I was out of town when this was released. I got back to the flurry of information being shared and was inspired by not having much to contribute, because it was covered well by staff, well by Todd, and incredibly well by vested commissioners. I do want to say a couple things. I'm a huge fan within strategies of addressing the workforce, both in perception and invest in advancement of education and opportunities. That has been something on my personal agenda for a while. Having been educated by Oregon State University and Todd Montgomery and his crew, and watching Chemeketa College receive awards for their education of hospitality. Additionally, your group, with their ability to make traditionally qualifiable information into a quantifiable KPI, specifically overall support of tourism development from the resident and net promoter score. I find wonderful ways to figure out whether we're doing a good job for small communities, large communities. And then a question, I'm wondering, in light of your new information on the international visitation, if we might want some sort of KPI for PDX, especially on the heels of a stupendous looking and functioning new terminal or complete airport. If we couldn't see quarterly or in our meetings the actual international visitation coming through PDX. And then a quick side note, I really hope that then we restore regional flights from PDX so that those visitors can efficiently get throughout the state, travel throughout the state. And I will end with a big thank you again. And thank you, Chair Boyles, for recognizing me.
Certainly.
Chair Boyles, if I may,
there we go. All right. I'm sorry. Who was? Who?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Boyles. I was happy to respond to Greg's question, or
please.
The short answer is yes. We can definitely track with the assistance of our colleagues at Portland International Airport international arrival data. We can also provide a snapshot of international arrival data probably into the US through Brand USA. So I will check on that broadly. But specifically for PDX, yes, because we do have our European flights restored, the Canadian flights restored. There are flights to Mexico. Our Asian flights, as you noted, are not restored yet. And so those are still TBD. But as a metric for us to track and be able to report out to you at a commission meeting, we can definitely do that.
Thank you, Todd. I would comment that I think any decision to, I'm not sure how much we might influence any decision to bring back intra-Oregon flights between PDX and our other airports. It seems like there's a pretty substantial shortage of pilots, which isn't to say that's not work we shouldn't advocate for, but that may not be something that's happening in the near term.
And for what it's worth, if I may, Chair Boyles, for those of us that were able to be back in Washington, D.C. for Destination Capital Field, which is the industry's fly-in, one of our talking points was specifically around investing in the training of the next generation of pilots, that we need to refill that pipeline for pilots and pilot training. So that was something that some of us on this call were able to be back and advocating for just a month ago.
Yeah, great. I'm glad to hear that. If it were only as simple as a couple months of community college, we'd soon be ready to go. Commissioner Willits.
I will throw out a shout out to Outlaw Navigation Program at our local high school that is graduating pilots before they receive their high school diploma.
Wow.
Chair Boyles, I just want to recognize that Commissioner Stevenson's got her hand raised for a bit.
Thank you. I didn't see it against your background. I appreciate that, Commissioner Ponzi. Commissioner Stevenson.
Oh, thanks so much for helping me out there, Commissioner Ponzi. I was just quietly waiting my turn. I just wanted to follow up on the comments made by others and say how much I really appreciate all of the work that it takes to create a plan like this. And Also to recognize the responsiveness of staff after our initial feedback. I know I provided feedback along with the rest of the commission, and I was really heartened to see how much that was worked into this current iteration of the plan. I was also really excited to see in that initial wave of priority strategies, both livability and workforce really highlighted, I think, their key priorities for the commission and for tourism as a whole in Oregon. And I was just I was curious to know more about how the individual priorities were created. So for example, within the realm of workforce, is this something that is staff driven? Is this something that staff is working on with key partners in the industry? I'm thinking of this one's an easy poll. We all saw Eric Abbey and Jeff Knapp both receive recognition in this area last year at the governor's conference. And I was just curious to learn more about the process behind the creation of these, of the specifics within each of these strategies.
Happy to respond to that, Chair Boyles. Commissioner Stevenson, thank you. Great question, and appreciate the clarification as well. First of all, the point of origination for the strategy was manyfold. And by that, I mean, we did stakeholder surveys, we had listening sessions with the tribes, within each of the regions. We brought together the industry, within the Travel Oregon staff team. We had over 2,000 touch points where we were receiving feedback on what the industry believed the priorities should be for then became the strategic priorities that you see contained in the 10-year strategic vision. So this is very much all hands, in terms of forming this. This is, while we embrace it and had it adopted as Travel Oregon strategic vision, I feel it's very much an agency, an industry strategic vision. To your point about the action teams, there is work that's being done. We have a multi-year agreement that we have in place with the Oregon Hospitality Foundation, which is run under the auspices of the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association. This is a primary workforce development organization for Oregon's travel and tourism industry. This is where ProStart happens. If you're familiar with the ProStart program and that annual competition, this is where other industry workforce needs and initiatives are also able to move forward and to be addressed. And you rightfully acknowledge the tremendous work, for example, of Eric Abbey, who's been serving as the chair of the Oregon Hospitality Foundation now for a couple of years. He's the lead of the program at Chemeketa Community College, and someone that's been instrumental in workforce development and workforce training here in Oregon for the travel and tourism industry for years, if not decades. So to have him in this position is pivotal. He's specifically reaching out to folks in state agencies, the Oregon Employment Department, to make sure that we're tracking industry employees properly. There are a number of different ways that employees in our industry are tracked. You often see references to travel and tourism or leisure and hospitality. I won't bore you with the difference between SIC codes and NAICS codes, but suffice to say they exist, they're real, and they can be complicated and confusing. And SIC was to go away and NAICS were to take over. We're still kind of in that transition in terms of how folks view jobs in the travel and tourism industry. So it's very much a collaborative process. There are certain parts of it that we as Travel Oregon can and should be helping lead and develop in our own right, and that's the work to come. And then there's work that we're coming alongside, like the work that's being done at the OSU Cascades campus under Todd Montgomery's leadership, the work that's happening within our community college system generally, and the work that's happening with the Oregon Hospitality Foundation, as well as the DMOs that have really assumed a leadership role. And Jeff is a great example of that, with what he's not only brought to his destination there in McMinnville, but the voice he's bringing to challenge all of us in the travel and tourism industry to pay even greater attention to the workforce needs of the travel and tourism industry.
Thank you, Todd. Commissioner Gremmels, I thought I saw your hand up momentarily. Did you have a comment or question?
Again, I appreciate the work of the Oregon tourism staff and Todd and the comments from our stakeholders and commissioners, and really highlight the focus of this plan and budget towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's very much appreciated, and looking and highlighting the importance of serving those communities that are underserved and under-resourced. So that's much appreciated. And again, highlighting too the importance of looking at the impact of this budget towards regenerative tourism and highlighting that experiential aspect in addition to the social equity, environmental equity, and environmental or economic equity impact of this budget. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you, Commissioner Gremmels. One of the downsides of waiting to go last and having each of you giving each of you the opportunity to speak ahead of me is that so many of the important points have been made. I would like to reiterate just a couple though. I do appreciate the learnings that are evident in this process, learnings from past efforts, in particular the opportunity for commissioners to review and comment beforehand with sufficient time for those comments to be responded to and where appropriate incorporated into the draft document that is shared then more broadly. I would also like to acknowledge that for me, at least, the work that is described in the 2-year plan does flow very directly from the 10-year plan that we adopted. And I too appreciate the use of the specific work plans and the KPIs to evaluate them. So thank you for that. I'm very pleased, I will say, with the process to this point. The record does remain open for through May 31st, as was said. And I'm hopeful that we get additional comment for consideration at our upcoming meeting. So, commissioners, we're coming to the point of closing the meeting. Are there any announcements? Oh, I see Commissioner Ponzi, your hand is up.
Yeah, I was trying to be polite. I'm working on it, guys.
And I'll try to remember to look. So.
No, I just wanted to acknowledge not only, of course, Travel Oregon staff as we have, but also I just want to acknowledge the folks that did take the time to write in response to this plan. And I do know that there were some folks in my neck of the woods that hustled pretty quickly to try to get some information out to all of us in time for this meeting. I want to just acknowledge those folks and the importance of the information they sent. So thank you for doing that. And for the other folks that also did the same. I think there were 3 or 4 other folks, other groups that had sent in some testimony. So I just wanted to acknowledge those folks. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioners, anything for the good of the order? All right then. As you know, our next meeting will be June 12th and 13th in Lakeview, and I look forward to seeing all of you, I hope, in person in Lakeview. All right. With that, today's meeting is adjourned. Thanks once again. Bye all.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much.
Have a good evening.